I read a few use cases and some interesting stories around DAOs. The most interesting one was people got together, built a constitution DAO, and tried to buy the US constitution back in 2021. I think they were unsuccessful at it, but I think that's one of the most interesting stories that I had. What are some of the use cases that you have seen personally around
Yeah,
DAOs, and how do we replicate some of the current organizational structures, let's say for an agency or something like that? Can you take an example and explain that to our audience as well?
absolutely. Constitution DAO was very interesting. It came pretty close actually to getting. They were outbidden by a billionaire, and they were not trying to buy, like they were trying to buy a copy of the Constitution. And there are similar examples like that. People have bought teams like football teams, basketball teams as a collective. Like imagine you go in and say, hey, I'm going to be an owner in Barcelona tomorrow, right? Like Barcelona Football Club. Like it is possible if you can get really enthused fans together and like pool in money and so on, you can make that happen. So you can decide whether Messi should be playing or not, right? Like you can decide now that is not true, but let's say this was 2018, you could pretty much decide that, hey, like the club is going to wear a yellow attire. You could do whatever you wanted to, honestly, and that's interesting. But coming to real use cases, right? Like, okay, so see, DAOs can be set up for absolutely anything, right? Like you can set up a DAO for just reviewing stuff. You can set up a DAO just for purpose of fun. You can set up a DAO for producing movies. You can set up a DAO for running a business. But some models are definitely more useful. So the most useful or the most successful model so far has been investment DAO. See, DAO, because by the idea or by the rules of it, it's a group of people where everyone has a say. You have collective intelligence or hive mind in the DAO, which means if Prashant has a secret or he's really specialized in podcasts, or let's say you know the nitty gritties of things that I don't know, and the two of us pair up, I also bring some similar skill, right? Like, and the collective is way more stronger here. But that collective is often not really given a voice because decisions are made in closed rooms in traditional companies. In DAOs, you have a voice, right? Like you can go on and do whatever, you can comment on stuff, you can make a case against why the proposal that has been floated doesn't make sense. So investment DAOs, what they do is like imagine a traditional company and you were trying to decide whether you should expand into a country like Philippines. The CEO is going to send a team of people, right? And they'll go in and say, hey, go spend a month out, do some market research and come and tell us whether we should expand as a company into Philippines market or not. That team is going to do a work and they will come back. But is it going to be as effective as picking 10 people who have spent most of their life in Philippines doing business and asking them to comment on it? Probably not, right? Like, so that is what DAOs enable. DAOs go in and say, hey, I'm trying to invest into art. Get the best person who has knowledge about the art to comment on it. Hey, I'm going to try and invest into climate. Get the best person who has knowledge about the climate to comment on it, right? Like, let them take the lead in terms of whether we should vote yes or no against it. So that is collective intelligence, and investments are a massive use case. There are DAOs that come as service guilds, which means you come to me and tell me, hey, I want a gig done, I want a design piece done, and there are people sitting in. So you will just have to float a task saying, I'm looking for a designer who will be able to do this. And then designers will come back and say, oh, I'm going to charge you $10 an hour, $30 an hour, $50 an hour, right? Like, and there is a smart contract to guarantee that the day I have delivered the product, I'm going to get paid. Like, there's no contractor, freelancer, that hassle that comes in, right? Like, so that is one of the examples. So service DAOs are very popular. There are product DAOs. So what I mean by product DAOs is like you come together and you build legit software, which means, for example, imagine how Mozilla came up, right? Like Mozilla was built by a team. It was built by a community. It was built by people who were frustrated with the existing browsers, and it worked brilliantly. It was not structured as a DAO, but imagine for doing Mozilla, you were also to reward people. And DAOs have some very interesting angles. So, see, when I did a project at Sprinkler, and let's say the company made $10 in a recurring fashion every year, all I got was a salary, right? Like, because I was working as an employee there. DAOs change that. DAOs come and say, hey, Prashant, if you have contributed to building a product that's going to bring in $10 every year, you're going to get $1 every time the company gets paid $10 for lifetime. which is like a royalty or a perpetual earning of sorts for you, right? You do not get questioned around, oh, you want to do music, but you have a technical background or you have an agency background, you really can't do it, right? Like that is how people work in traditional setups. You question people, hey, do you have a resume? But your resume, doesn't speak like you have an expertise in economics. DAOs change that. DAOs go in and say, okay, you want to do economics, you want to do music, prove it that you can do, submit what you want to do. And as long as the community feels that you did a good job, we do not really care about what your resume was, right? Like, so that is brilliant because you could work on your own terms. You could decide that I will only participate in things that are going to pay me $100 an hour or $2,000 an hour. If you are convincing enough, people will agree to it. You could work for 5 companies at the same time. So you could be a part of Constitution DAO that's trying to buy a copy of US Constitution. You could be a part of a football club DAO. You could be a part of a product DAO. You could be a part of a music DAO. And imagine, work for you now is like spending 5 hours on music, 2 hours on football, 3 hours on this, right? Like, so it's fun. And there is no rules. Like there's nothing like, oh, it's an office and you have to come at 9 in the morning and work till 5 in the evening. Work on your own terms. If you're on a vacation on a Monday, so be it. Like you're just away. And you tell people that I will take 20 days to do this and you get it done in 20 days. That is all that matters. It doesn't matter whether you work on day 1 or day 19, right? And it's community driven, so everyone like volunteers to help you. But again, primary use cases that have given like a PMF or like have a hit a real good outcome so far are mostly investments and things like services and products. But you can imagine there are people who are trying to do philanthropy as a DAO. There are people who are trying to do education as a DAO. There are people who are trying to do charity. We had, because of the ongoing situation in Russia, Ukraine, there was a fund that was created to aid. And there are people who are like just coming and like aiding, right? Like people who are getting affected because of everything that the military is like doing and all the atrocities or whatever is happening there. You get it, right? Like you can pretty much build a DAO for absolutely anything. Use cases could be, hey, I'm gonna do a movie. We are gonna produce a movie. Let's say the two of us collaborate and we go on and say we are gonna buy Olympics, right? Like what that means is, you of course you can't buy Olympics, but you we go in and say we're gonna buy the sporting rights, and that's been actually discussed lately. That hey, all of these athletes that come in when they are performing at Olympics, the footage and everything that they have is all owned by Olympics. So they are in their prime for the 8 years, 10 years, 12 years that they are playing, right? Like they get medals, they make money, and then what? They're retired, they're done for life. They spend most of their life training for the sport, so they do not have skills where they can deploy. All they are supposed to do is like act as a motivational speaker, and everything that they have is become an IP of someone else. So there was this proposal lately saying, can we really go on and ensure that we go on and buy the rights for that, which means Olympic players can come together as a DAO and say that, oh, we are going to own that right. And then every time that video is watched, I'm going to get paid. Not like, or maybe I'm going to get paid 50% as opposed to everything going to the person who recorded or who owns the IP and so on. So interesting things can really be done here. You have people trying to fight healthcare as a DAO, right? Like they're coming in and saying, oh, let's collate resources to fight these spread of viruses. Someone is coming and saying, we'll create a DAO that will only fund cancer research, right? Like someone is coming and doing longevity. So we have people who are coming and doing like DAOs like Vita DAO, Cure DAO. They're working on research, biotech grants, and everything that will ensure that we as human beings can have longer lives, right? Like there is a DAO that recently sent someone to space, and then they actually plan on sending someone to moon as well. So interesting things are happening on that front. But yeah, those are some of the use cases.
Absolutely. I think that's how they say the collective is stronger than the sum of its parts, right? So I think that's one thing that is absolutely true for DAOs as well.